Today, we're diving into a radical retelling of world history. We're going to look at sources that argue Black civilizations weren't just a part of the story we all know, they were literally the foundation.
So let me ask you this. What if the history you were taught in school actually began somewhere in the middle of the story? That's the central question posed by some really powerful works. Books like When the World Was Black. The argument they make is that what we typically learn is fundamentally incomplete, like jumping into a movie halfway through.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start by retelling some history, then look at Africa as the dawn of civilization. From there, we'll explore a global Black presence, how that history got, well, colonized, and finally, why bringing it all back to light matters so much right now.
Okay, let's jump right in. Civilization's African dawn. Now, the sources we're looking at make a really bold claim here. They argue that all those essential elements of civilization, the things we learn about, didn't actually begin in Mesopotamia or Greece. No, they started thousands of years earlier, in Africa.
So, check out this timeline. It really turns conventional history on its head. We're talking agriculture in Egypt, carbon dated to 18,000 BC, way, way earlier than we're usually taught. And this thing, the Ishango bone, wow. It's not just some simple counting tool. Scientists who studied it think its markings show an understanding of prime numbers, even multiplication. That pushes the known origins of complex mathematics back by thousands of years. And get this, these sources argue it wasn't just about math or farming. We're talking about all the fundamental building blocks of civilization: religion, philosophy, art, science, government, writing, the whole shebang. The claim is that all of this originated in Africa first, and then spread out across the rest of the world over millennia.
Now this quote, it really drives home a key point. We tend to think of ancient Egypt as this grand starting point, right? Well, according to these findings, Egypt was actually a continuation. The argument is that an even older Black civilization, in Nubia, had already figured out advanced writing, religion, and complex political structures. Egypt didn't invent them, it inherited them and built upon them.
Okay, so if civilization really did dawn in Africa, the next logical question is, where did it go from there? Well, the next piece of this puzzle, according to our sources, is a global Black presence, evidence of influence far, far beyond the African continent in the ancient world. A huge part of this story is the arrival of the Moors in Europe. Now, authors like Chancellor Williams paint a really vivid picture. They describe the Moors, who they identify as Black Africans, arriving on a continent that had basically plunged into its dark ages.
So, starting in 711 AD, the argument goes that the Moors didn't just conquer Spain, they reintroduced these core principles of civilization to a Europe that was supposedly 90% illiterate. They brought back literacy, science, philosophy, and this wasn't happening in a vacuum. At the same time, you had these great West African empires like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai that were absolutely thriving, with their trade fueling this incredible period of growth and knowledge.
All right, now this next part might be one of the most surprising claims in all of these texts. It's the argument for a major African presence in the Americas centuries before Columbus. The scholar most famous for this work is Ivan van Sertima.
And this is Exhibit A for his argument: the incredible, colossal Olmec stone heads found in Mexico. Van Sertima and others look at these and say, hey, look at the features, the broad noses, the full lips. They argue these are distinctly African or Negroid features. The idea isn't that Africans carved them, but that Native American artists were carving these giant portraits of important visitors they had actually seen, struggling to capture a look that was totally new to them. But the argument is way bigger than just the Olmec heads. These sources point to a lot more. You've got historical accounts of a Malian emperor, Abu Bakari II, who supposedly sent a massive expedition across the Atlantic. You have Columbus himself writing about finding spear points in Haiti made of a gold-copper alloy called guanine, which was the exact same material and name used in West Africa. And then there are even pre-Columbian skeletons found in the Pecos River Valley that anthropologists at the time said most closely resembled African groups. So all of this raises a huge critical question, right? If this evidence exists, why isn't it common knowledge? Why isn't this in our history books? Well, that leads us directly into our next section, the colonization of history, and how this entire story was, as these authors argue, systematically erased. The historian John Henrik Clarke puts it pretty bluntly. He argues that the physical colonization of lands went hand in hand with an intellectual one. It's the idea that history itself was colonized, rewritten to push a new narrative where whiteness was equated with goodness and Europe was the sole source of light and civilization for the rest of the world. And this really lays it out side by side. On one side, you have the established narrative we're all familiar with. On the other, the suppressed history these sources present. And the authors argue there's a very specific reason one story won out over the other. This new, established narrative, they claim, provided the perfect justification for things like the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism. And Chancellor Williams, he takes it even a step further. He argues that this wasn't just an accident or some kind of unconscious bias. No, he alleges that the confusion was, in his words, deliberately contrived. He claims that the specialists, the experts on ancient Egypt, were fully aware of the facts we're talking about, but chose to ignore or hide them to protect this new version of history. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Why does recovering this history actually matter today? In our final section, we're going to get into why these authors believe this is so much more than just an academic debate. It's about reclaiming the past to truly understand our present. When you dig into it, it becomes clear why this matters so much to these writers. For them, it's not just about getting the facts right. It's about challenging the racist ideologies that were built on a foundation of lies to justify slavery and colonialism. It's about restoring a legacy of incredible contributions to science, to government, to culture. And, as scholars like Claude Anderson point out, it's about providing a solid foundation, a true history for empowerment and justice in the world today. And we're going to leave you with this really powerful thought from the book When the World Was Black. It states that there would be no such thing as history without Black people. Black people are the authors of world civilization and the original people of the planet. Now, that's a statement that doesn't just want to add a missing chapter to our history books. It wants to reframe the entire story of human civilization, right from page 1.